Well, I finally did it. 2 table saws in the workshop, back to back, and guess what? It's even better than I expected. Stick around for all the benefits and details of a 2 table saw setup in your shop. Honey, I need another table saw. I usually keep this table saw dedicated with a dado blade in it. Often I'm using just a full 3/4 inch wide stack, and so that's what I'll have on the Fusion F2 most of the time, because I like to do all my tenon cuttings, all my joinery, making grooves, making dados. If I'm making a door for a glass bookcase, there's a lot of joinery involved there, and I would make that at this table saw. On the other side, I just keep a combination blade, and that way, whether the task involves joinery or just breaking down sheet goods, I've got my bases covered and I don't have to switch blades. One of my frustrations with the standard single table saw setup is I was always switching back and forth between a standard blade and a dado blade. And just when I think I had all my grooves and notches and tenons cut, I would realize, oh, one more, and I got to switch back over to the standard blade. So this constant back and forth between the standard and the dado blade, it seems trivial because it doesn't take that long, but when you're constantly back and forth in the midst of a project, it really does slow your momentum. The Laguna has a 36-inch rip capacity compared to my Sawstop that has a 52-inch rip, so for me it makes sense to do the panel breakdowns of large plywood and sheet goods over on the Sawstop side, and that leaves me the Laguna for all my detailed joinery work. And that has worked out really well with these 2 models. If your saws differ, you could certainly alter the concept up to make it work in your shop. I think in general, this idea of putting saws back to back really makes sense. You don't need the full width of 2 wide saws next to each other, and even 2 large saws back to back doesn't take up that much more room than a main saw with an outfeed table. Speaking of outfeed tables, check out the monolith. It's got the factory outfeed table from the optional 52-inch rip on the Sawstop, but everything else is a custom outfeed table that I've made, and it's with 1-inch thick MDF, not the 3/4 stuff, full 1-inch thick MDF with a Wilson Art flat black laminate. And it just really connects these saws in a great way, keeping all the function that you'd want with a back-to-back setup. So whether I'm coming from the Sawstop side with a piece of 8/4, or I'm coming from the Laguna side, any of the transitions from the cast iron to the MDF outfeed table is going to be smooth and offer that perfect support that I'm after. And to accomplish that, you really need a leveling system for whatever outfeed table you design. For cross-cutting 8/4 stock, I've got a single runner sled that I use on the Sawstop side. And because it's a single runner, there's no continuous fence on the back of this, so I have no height restrictions. I can cut to the full capacity of that blade. Or if you need to cross-cut extra long pieces or oversized panels, consider making an X-cut sled. Look for more information on this build in the description box. Now, setting up for tapered cuts, that can work on either saw, and let me show you what I mean. This is a custom-made tapering sled, and when you have a sled, what you want is the edge of the sled to actually indicate where the blade is going to cut. So use this sled with this particular blade. It happens to be a thin kerf blade, but the neat thing here is this side aligns with the Sawstop, and I can actually flip it around, and the other way will actually align with the blade of the Laguna. So either side of the island that I'm on, I can use this tapering sled to cut tapered legs, for instance, for arts and crafts furniture. One thing I wondered about when I was first setting up this 2 table saw system was, are the fences going to be in the way? In other words, if you want to do a large rip cut from this side, is that going to be in the way of the fence on the other side? And the answer is yes and no. Basically, on this 52-inch rip saw, I can get about 36 inches of rip capacity before anything is in the way. Now, if I have a full sheet of plywood on here, I may need to lower the blade and just pop the fence off on the Laguna side. That, to me, seems like a small price to pay because I get to keep dedicated dado blade on that side, and that's the thing that's really saved me some time with detailed projects. Well, you may be able to see that the overall concept is kind of like an island. Two big saws back to back with an outfeed table in between. But we also have a sanding station and then a drill press over on this side. That gives us a great opportunity to drop a main dust collection pipe down the middle and supply all these machines with a single 6-inch pipe. But let's look at all the ways that we've tricked out this station for best use. We've got long extensions of the miter slots into the outfeed table for any jig or fixture that might use a miter bar. Where the two saws connect, there's a nice T-molding detail and a sweeping organic curve, so there's nothing sharp to catch your hip on as you walk by. There are table saw carts on both sides of the island, which really helps to store common table saw accessories. A safety loop is always a great idea on power tools. It's just a length of extension cord that brings the outlet around the front of the saw where it's easier to access, so we can unplug the saw for blade changes and maintenance. There's a couple of noteworthy features underneath the saw. We've got a hard pipe dust collection system that's supported by an I-beam. And that's just plywood construction to very simply support the dust pipe in the right position. And then it splits off to flex hoses at the last minute, and we've actually got automated blast gates. These are a really nice feature, and we're running that on both saws. And those are from IVAC. Basically, you fire up your machine, it turns on the dust collection and opens the correct blast gate automatically. Maybe the best part of having one saw dedicated to a dado blade is you get to leave on all your favorite accessories for doing joinery and tenon cuts. The cart on this side doubles as a sanding station and attaches to a 4-inch hose with manual blast gate. It's a great extra work surface in the shop that you can easily tuck out of the way when you're done with it. One of the keys to getting both saws coplanar with each other and flush with a good outfeed table is an ability to level 4 corners of both saws. If your saw has that from the factory, that's the easiest way. Otherwise, you'll have to add an accessory that lets you level the saw at all 4 corners. Here's one idea for adding that capacity to your saw. Just bolt a length of angle iron to the side of the saw and add leveling feet. The next thing you'll need to have is a system for leveling the outfeed table with both of your saws. I came up with a simple technique that uses threaded inserts and bolts simply to hold the table down in position. It also uses common hardware store feet levelers to lift the outfeed table up and make it perfectly flush with the cast iron surface. On the Laguna side, the table is mounted with a support block, and we made use of this channel with common hardware store bolts. Because we use such a solid 1-inch thick MDF and the outfeed table gets support from both table saws, there's really no need for extra support in the middle. It's a pretty nice little setup. Now all you have to do is practice your request. Honey, I need another table saw. All right guys, there it is. All the details and benefits of 2 table saws set up back to back in the shop. See if this setup just doesn't work for you. Thanks for watching. Just make sure your table saw sleds can cross-commodulate with your bandsaw sleds. Honey, I need another table saw. That was too whiny. Needs work. Honey, I need another table saw.